Welcome to another edition of Around the Table with Stacy Smith, and also a Happy New Year to you as well. It may be a new year, but the basics are still the same. This will be a critical year for the state and the nation with the midterm elections. In Pennsylvania, it means Pennsylvanians will be electing a new governor and a new senator. And one congressperson will be losing their seat in the state because the state is being forced to give up one congressional seat because the population has declined. Now, to talk about all of this and give you some insight from their perspective, at least, I'd like to introduce you to my panel. They consist of former Pennsylvania governor and Republican Tom Corbett. Mr. Corbett was also the state attorney general and the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. He has practices law here in Pennsylvania and also teaches law at Duquesne University. Around the table, we will find Jim Byrne. Jim is the former chairman of the State Democratic Party here in Pennsylvania. He also served as president of the Allegheny County Council and as mayor of Millvale. Jim is an attorney in town. We go back around the table, we find Keith SCHMIDT. Now, Keith's background in politics goes back to the Reagan administration, and Keith was the state director for former Republican Senator Rick Santorum. Keith also was a consultant to Santorum's presidential bid in 2012. Keith has his own consulting firm here in Pittsburgh. And seated across the table on the Democratic side is someone who I like to call the great philosopher of Around the Table, Joe Mystic. Joe is a guiding light for a lot of Democrats and is consulted on campaigns across the state. He also served in several roles in city government, including the role of deputy mayor for the city of Pittsburgh. Joe teaches law now at Duquesne University, and you can read his thoughts on life and politics in the Trib every Sunday. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, Happy New Year to you. Now, I have not checked this morning, but at last count, there are 15 Republicans who say they want to become the next governor, compared to just one Democrat. Governor Corbett, I'm going to ask you, what's going on here? 15 candidates?
Well,
with 15, how many are going to be left on the primary ballot?
Stacy, happy New Year to you first.
Thank you.
That's a good guess. I would probably have a better chance of guessing what the score of the Steelers-Chiefs game would be than picking that one out. I would suggest probably half that number. First thing, people have to be able to get around to the various caucuses that we have now in the Republican Party. Each weekend, for the next 3 weekends, there's a caucus, and then we go into state committee because they'll be trying to get the state committee endorsement, those who want it. The other thing they have to do is get a number of signatures from around the state, so many per county, up to, I think it's, if I recall correctly, it's 2,000. I'm sure Jim can tell me if I'm wrong on that, to get on the ballot. But most importantly, you have to demonstrate that you're going to be able to raise money to fund your campaign. There's a lot of people out there. I've met a number of them. I would suspect that we may get down to 6 or 7. I don't think there'll be 15 on when we get to the primary itself.
All right, that's your thought on that. Keith, I'm going to go to you. I'm going to stay on the Republican side of the table here for a moment. There is a mix of political leanings among these candidates. We have those who will have the edge for the primary. Will one of them, I should say, have the edge for the primary? Will those who lean toward former President Trump have the edge, or those who maybe not necessarily want to be associated with him?
Oh, it's going to be a real balancing act. I think that the smart candidates don't run to the president, the former president, and they don't run away from him. I think you have to look at the policies that you might be able to embrace. I think the smart candidates will talk about his positions on oil and gas. He'll talk about his positions on being tough on China with trade, his tax programs and job creation programs for small and large businesses alike. I think that's a way to identify themselves with some of the policy successes that the former president had, but stay away from the personal stuff. Stay away from the boisterous former president, the bull in the china shop. That does not help them. But they also have to win a general election. So for the same reason why when primary voters on both sides are pushed to the left or right, they have to be careful how far they go in either direction, because in the end, it's not about winning a nomination. It's about winning a general election. One of the important things that the former governor mentioned was about collecting petition signatures. 10 counties, they have to get 200 signatures per county. And it's always a tall order. It's a taller order with COVID and the variant being out there. So it makes it more difficult. That will thin the ranks a bit. But to the end of, to the narrative on signatures, the most important thing, in my opinion, that any Republican that wants to see a Republican elected governor do is support whatever candidate comes out with an interest with the Green Party. They need somebody on the Green Party on the ballot for governor. We need to be able to bleed a percentage or two when so many elections in Pennsylvania's history are decided on a couple percentage points for United States Senate and for governor. So they need a candidate there. And now we have a reason to help them, because for years you had to be registered a certain party to solicit and gather signatures. Now, if you're a registered voter anywhere in Pennsylvania, you could circulate any petition. So they can literally help a Green Party candidate get on the ballot. And in the same light, the Democrats are going to do the same with the Libertarian Party or somebody like that. But it's very important in the fifth largest state in the union, when nobody's away with races, that 1 or 2% could determine the next governor of Pennsylvania.
All right, Keith, thank you. Jim, I'm going to call on you next. The Democrats would never help a libertarian get on the ballot, would they?
No, God forbid. No.
Mike,
no, just like Keith isn't hanging out with the extreme left to find a Green candidate. No.
No, exactly. Here's my real question for you, though. With so many candidates on the Republican side, is this good for the Democratic side?
No, it's too soon. There's nothing that you can glean from this, in my opinion, to give any headwind to the Democrats. These are two separate conversations. The governor used a football analogy. We're in the AFC and the NFC championships. Totally different playbooks right now. The playbook for November will be totally different. I think what it speaks to, having so many, however, is I would submit a little bit of a leadership vacuum in the GOP statewide right now. Josh Shapiro on the Democratic side has been the perceived nominee, the inevitable nominee, probably for the last 10 years for this specific cycle at this time. So that has created a groundswell support around him. It has prevented anyone of any substance, I would submit, substance being name recognition, ability to raise money and get signatures, from challenging him. So that's a straight shot. The GOP doesn't have that. That's the only thing I would look into. And I do believe that the governor and Keith are correct when they talk about what is going to be needed from this group of 15 in the next 3 weeks. I believe it will start to call significantly when they realize how difficult it is to get those signatures as laid out by the governor and Keith. You throw the COVID variable on top of that, a potential winter storm next week, all those things, plus fundraising, name recognition, the tango you have to do with the party insiders. I think it'll be down to 8 or 7. So to answer your first question, no, the Democrats can't read anything into this. The real conversations will begin with the Democrats once both parties have selected their nominees.
Okay. Joe Mystic, similar to what I asked Keith about, from the Democratic viewpoint, does it make a difference whether the GOP gubernatorial candidate happens to side with former President Trump?
Well, we on the Democratic side certainly hope that the Republican candidate is someone who's very, very close to the defeated former president. And as Keith had mentioned, they will, of course, being the excellent tacticians that they've been all these many years in Pennsylvania with a distinct registration disadvantage, they will use a strategy of divide and conquer. It's been very, very successful for them, and together with some policy positions that the Republicans have embraced and that they own, they have a real shot in spite of the numbers in Pennsylvania. So it seems that from a Democratic side, if someone is nominated who is an acolyte of the former defeated president, that will probably necessarily cap the amount of support they're going to get from Pennsylvania voters. There's a really sharp drop off. If you're pro-Trump, after a while you hit a wall. You can only get so many voters, and after that it hurts you and it doesn't help you. All right.
Off topic, well, on topic here, I should say, you're talking about signatures, you're talking about these campaigns. What we haven't brought up and talked about yet, and anybody can jump in on this one, is how much does campaign funding make a difference in getting that candidate on the ballot?
Campaign funding?
It's huge.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a money game
Yeah, you're gonna
on
have to pay
both sides of
people.
the aisle and on both the United States candidates. Are we? I think it's going to come down. You have some self-funders on both sides.
Yeah.
You have people that are going to have to raise money, and once they're on the ballot, really the important thing right now is nothing's more important than getting on the ballot. But in the end, nobody's paying attention to either of these races. They have to be in a financial position to get on television. Never come down from television. And that's a lot of money. That's tens of millions of dollars. And they're going to know early on in March of this whether the next resources to finish the race. Let me just say one thing that is related. The reason that there might be a crowded field, both candidates that stay in the race after petitions, is, in my opinion, Republican State Party will not endorse this year. They are not going. I think it's going to be an open endorsement. It'll be, you could favor the candidate of your choice. So I think the hurdle is getting on the ballot. And if they stay on the ballot, if they get on the ballot, I think endorse candidate without a clear cut winner. I think they'll all stay on until May's primary.
Well, Keith's right about the money. Unless you can raise a lot of money, you're just not in this race. So that is, that is the control on the number of candidates you're going to have, or viable candidates either party could have in the race.
Okay, great. Jim, I'm going to go back to you. We talked about the Republicans having 15 candidates potentially on the ballot. The Democrats right now, only one Democrat in the state of Pennsylvania wants to become governor.
Well, I'm sure that there are others, other Democrats who want to become governor, but they're pragmatic and they see the organization that Josh Shapiro has put around himself, the years of preparation to position himself for this opportunity, his ability to raise money, the money he already has. He is just one of the most up-to-date, sophisticated campaigners I've seen. I saw how when he first ran for state attorney general, the organization and the up-to-date network and ability that he had around him to do what he needed to do to win that primary and then go on to win that general election. The Democrats, they also appreciate, all Democrats appreciate that this year they are riding into a headwind. By all accounts, 2022 is supposed to be a very big year for the GOP. And all polling suggests that. So you have that. The Democrats are cognizant of that. So they don't want any distractions in the spring. Democrats are cognizant of the fact that whomever gets the nomination for the GOP, they're going to have unlimited resources in November. They're cognizant of that. They're cognizant of the fact that no party has ever won 3 straight terms for Pennsylvania governor. So that's headwind number 3. So everybody is very aware of that on our side of this equation. So you have to mitigate as much distraction, diversion, or waste of resources to have a clear shot to upend these trends. And so that's another reason why I think the only name you're going to see is Attorney General Josh Shapiro.
Joe, if Jim is correct, is this healthy for the Democratic Party to only have one candidate running?
Well, there's an old belief in campaign politics that it's important to have a primary. You get to, test out some of your ideas. You get in shape on the campaign trail, and you're able to raise money if you have a primary opponent. I'm not so sure that's the case right now. I think that what a lone Democrat has to do if there is no primary opponent is run against Trump policies. Run against the specter of those policies returning to Pennsylvania, even through the primary. So you just start your campaign, what would otherwise be your general campaign. You start it earlier and you run against a set of beliefs that you believe that the people of Pennsylvania have rejected.
All right. Governor, you're the only one who has campaigned for this office, governor of Pennsylvania. handicap it as you see it right now?
Oh, I don't have handicap as to who the two candidates would be. First off, Josh Shapiro is going to be a Democratic candidate. We know that. And there's going to be a lot for the Republicans to run against with his record, but he's got a fair record. In regard to the Republican side at this point in time, there are some good candidates. It will be interesting to see if they run a campaign similar to Youngkin down in Virginia, where he did embrace somewhat the president, but didn't put his arms around him. The Republican candidate is going to have to keep the Trump base to the Republican Party, but he's also going to have to be able to appeal to the moderates, and that's where you win elections, the general elections. You got to appeal to the moderates and to, for want of a better description, unhappy, disenfranchised Democrats over there. Now, you're going to see that, I think, a lot more on the Senate side than you're going to see it on the governor's side. But there are 4 or 5 candidates that, if they have the money, Jake Corman being one of them, he's putting together quite an organization. Dave White out of Delaware County is putting together quite an organization behind him of people in the background that we all know. Those would be 2 of the candidates would probably be leading coming out of this. There's some dark horses out there. The Senator Martin out of Lancaster is running. Very attractive candidate. I don't know what his fundraising base would be. And I can't tell you the last time somebody from Lancaster County won. One of the things I've made the observation to many people, tell me the last time a member of the General Assembly was elected governor. And I'll put that on the table right now, and I will tell you it was a Democrat.
Mhm.
Wasn't Milton Schaaf, was it?
Nope, it was in the 50s. It was George Lee. Okay. One of the reasons that is every member of the legislature that's running has a track record of votes that they've made, and both in the primary and in the general election, that track record of votes can help you or it can hurt you.
Those are all names I was thinking of, Governor. Another name I'm thinking of, based on geography, is Melissa Hart.
Yes.
You can't. I watched her at the debate. She came across very pragmatic, very common sense. The need to work across the aisle. I mean, we've talked about, in order to win in the Republican Party statewide, you need to have Democratic support. She acknowledged that. She pointed to the fact that twice when she was on Congress, in districts that were registered Democratic, she won. Conservative in her values and beliefs, but pragmatic when it comes time to reach across the aisle. I would put Melissa Hart in the on the short list of candidates.
I agree.
Who, with everybody else being further out into the east, up and down the I-79 corridor, she has name recognition. Since she left Congress, she has been very active in her law practice and networking, the type of work she does. So she hasn't lost her relationships with Washington, D.C., so she will be able to raise money. Melissa Hart is a candidate that, if I were the Democrats, I'd be paying very close attention to.
Well, and you keep using the pronoun she. She's the only woman in the race on both sides. And that could be big this year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on. The field of candidates to replace retiring U.S. Senator Pat Toomey, a Republican, is a little more manageable for the Republican Party than maybe the governor's race. And this time the Democrats have several big names hoping to win the primary. So, Keith, I'm going to bring you back in. The person the president wanted to see win the senatorial race has dropped out. But there are still some big names: Dr. Oz, Jeff Bartos, Carla Sands, Kathy Barnett. And now it would appear that hedge fund manager David McCormick may be running. So how does it look to you at this moment with 5 months to go before the primary?
I have no real crystal ball on this race. I could handicap it by saying that somebody's going to have to come out and exhibit leadership skills and have an agenda on the important issues of the day that are facing the United States and Pennsylvania and articulate a plan for that. I think there's a real vacuum of leadership. I mean, there's no question that the president's approval rating is in the tank. The Republicans are in the minority in both chambers. And there's a lot of pushing issues that are really affecting the American voter right now. I mean, USA Today came out with an article this morning that said inflation is now at a 40-year high in America, that the consumer prices went up a record 7% in 1 year alone in 2021. The supply chain, the unstable global situation, the energy situation, the southern border that people are nervous about, the provocative moves by Russia, the China situation that seems to linger year after year after year, and all the double talk and triple talk on COVID and the variant and people's concern of, do we really have a hand? Do we see that we can understand and trust that the right people are in charge in giving us the right information? So somebody, I think, is going to come out of this field and say, I feel you. I mean, it's not inflation might as well be a tax increase. It's worse on economically distressed and middle class people than a tax increase, because you try to make taxes somewhat fair and put a range on them depending on your income. Inflation hits everybody and hits the least among us the hardest. So all the things that are really giving heartache to the American people, somebody in this Republican field has to step up to the plate, and people have to have confidence in him or her, and that they can finish this race and go to Washington and put Pennsylvania map, and more importantly, put the issues that are important to them on the front burner and get something done about it. Right now, they're languishing. There are so many things that they're concerned with, and I would say that the vast majority of people's concerns in America are not with their state capitals. They're with Washington, D.C. So somebody's going to come out of this and articulate a message that will give people confidence that help is on the way. And whoever does that will be the likely nominee and the next Republican senator from the great state of Pennsylvania.
The
All right.
economics, I'm sorry, Keith, Stacy wrote, the economic variable is variable number 4. I talked about 3 before. Number 4 is the economic variable. The last time we saw anything like this, 1980. And who came up on the GOP side? Ronald Reagan. And so whomever on the GOP wants to get an inside advantage, pull out the Ronald Reagan playbook from 1980, 1981, and look at the rhetoric, look at the platform, and look how he dealt with this identical issue. And they will get some traction with that.
All right. There's a question I could ask you about, Jim, and that is that, we've heard other people say they were comparing the Biden presidency to the Carter presidency. Are you doing the same thing right now?
Not yet. Not yet. There's still time. There's still time to get this under control. I mean, he's only been in 1 year, and this thing was already the roller coaster was already off the chain and starting down the hill when he took his hand off the Bible. So the next year is going to be critical. And again, this year is supposedly going to be a big year for the GOP. What will Joe Biden and his administration do to tackle this? Perhaps they should take some of those talking points as well. Those were moderate points that were embraced by Tip O'Neill as well. So there's a way for him to find his way through this before it's too late. If not, this is aligning to be a very good year for the GOP, and we just don't want that, do we, Joe?
Okay. Before we go back to Joe, Jim, I want to ask you this question. Probably more so because it was only one candidate for the governor. So we've got several candidates on the Democratic side, and we have them kind of lining up apparently with more on the progressive side, and those are more on the moderate side. Do you think we're going to see a progressive versus moderate slugfest in this primary?
A little bit, but not significantly. I mean, they will, as you said earlier in a question that you posited to the professor, they will kick the tires. This one, unlike the gubernatorial, because of the field, it's going to be inevitable. So you're going to have a little bit of that kicking the tires, doing a test drive of the candidates. But they're going to do it with kid gloves, I would submit. They're going to share their respective differences. Like I used to say when I was state chairman, the Miranda rights of the candidates, never say or do anything that will be used against you in the general by your Republican opponent. You'll see some of that. But there will be some differences. I don't think that they're radically different, so radically different that you have a moderate D and a extreme left R, that they're gonna slug it out. You may see that from their supporters going back and forth with each other, but the candidates will be more statesmanlike in that regard, I would submit.
So, Joe, I'll bring you in. Is that really necessarily healthy not to have a slugfest between the two, or should there be one?
Well, let me take us in a slightly different direction. I think in this race, Pennsylvania Republicans have to decide if there are any real Pennsylvania Republicans who they're going to support for this position. Some of these carpetbaggers, I think, would enter the race with the advantage of money, perhaps, but with the disadvantage of the fact that they're not real Pennsylvania Republicans. There are folks that are in here trying to take advantage of a situation. So that's the problem on the Republican side in this race. And it's a tough problem for them because, money talks. On the Democratic side, the greatest danger is that the Democrats could nominate someone who's too far to the left for the Pennsylvania electorate. We are not a left-leaning state. We're a centrist state. We're a purple state, as it's been described many times. And if we can keep consistent with someone who's up the middle, who is close to the center, left of center perhaps, but close to the center, we're going to have a better chance. We Democrats face that same difficult issue in the race for Mike Doyle's congressional seat. If we go too far left there as well, we won't win that seat. Because the demographics have changed dramatically around Allegheny County, throughout Allegheny County.
Governor, I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to ask you to wrap this one up once again. You just heard Joe. He's already laying the groundwork here in case someone like by the name of Dr. Oz happens to be the nominee. Your thoughts?
Well, he obviously doesn't want to talk about what happened in New York State with Bobby Kennedy and Hillary Clinton going up there and becoming senators up there, even though they weren't from those states. It does happen. And it will come down to the point that if one of the two people from out of state become the nominee, they will have done it by demonstrating within the party that they have ties to Pennsylvania and they're coming in with good ideas. And the one thing we haven't talked about today, and it's probably premature to do that, in regard to both the governor's race and the Senate race is, well, what do they stand for? What are the issues? That's for a show down the road. But I'd love to hear what their issues are, where their positions are. Right now, it's get your name on the ballot and get through the primary. And at this point, I don't think that the people of Pennsylvania are going to really make a decision right now based upon the fact that these two gentlemen are from outside of Pennsylvania. Making one observation, don't think this is going to happen. But Mr. McCormick has never said what he's running for in his commercials. Okay. And he says he has an exploratory committee. Now, I'm pretty sure it's for the Senate, but he does have ties to Pennsylvania. He grew up in Pennsylvania, grew up in the Bloomsburg area. It's a free markets that he started here in Pittsburgh. So he has those ties. He could, at this point, shift over and say, you know what, I changed my mind. I want to run for governor. I don't think it's going to happen, but nobody in the media has asked him that question yet.
I would suggest roots are much more important, though, in a governor's race than a federal race. People have a tolerance for people moving around because they're federal issues, and they give people sometimes a pass if they haven't lived for a period of time in a state. But governors, they want homegrown people. They want people that have been here for a protracted period of time, understand the issues, and can address them on day one. So I think Mr. McCormick is a much better suited Senate candidate than governor's candidate. But let me throw one little caveat in here also. There's still the reason that he's probably not formally in either race right now is they are still working through his residency requirements and to make sure that it can pass the smell test and that he's legally allowed to be a candidate for either of those offices in this May's primary.
Keith, we spent a couple weeks when I was a kid at Geneva on the Lake, Ohio, and I'm going to announce here that I'm running for a high office in Ohio.
All right. We have about 2 minutes or so to go here. So relatively short answers if you can. Before we get to the primary, we also have to have the state congressional map worked out. We're about 2 weeks away from the deadline on that, and we've had one map presented by the Republican-controlled legislature, and it's been heavily criticized. The governor would probably veto it. Where are we going as far as a congressional map? Is it going to go back to the state Supreme Court? And Jim, I'll start with you.
It is. Governor Wolf has thrown up his hands. He doesn't want to dabble in this. Unfortunate as that is. Yeah, I mean, and even if he did, it's still going to the Supreme Court. They will, like they did last time, draw the maps. So yes, endgame, Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Joe, you agree?
In fact, all of our maps, the legislative maps as well, will be decided by the courts.
Okay, that's your take on it. Keith?
A lot of litigants, a lot of versions, more so than the last time 10 years ago. They have changed rules a little bit. I can't get into the details in 2 minutes, but the downside is this map might not be official until March.
Right.
Until March. Governor, if that is the case, if Keith is right, does the governor have the ability then to postpone, or what would happen with the Pennsylvania primary? If you want to run for Congress, can you wait till March?
Well, I don't think you have a choice if they don't have the district that they know that they're going to run in. And off the top of my head, I believe it would take actually legislation to postpone that from the General Assembly, which I think would pass pretty quickly if there's not a firm map. I'll make one observation also. In the congressional map that I signed, the input from the Republicans and the Democrats was taken into account from the congressional side. Republicans, congressmen, and the Democrat congressmen all had input on that one, but eventually the Supreme Court threw that one out.
All right.
I remember that map.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us once again for Around the Table. And I also want to thank our viewers for joining us. And I hope that you join us again for our next edition of Around the Table with Stacy Smith. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Stacy.
Take care.
Happy New Year.
This has been a CBSN Pittsburgh special presentation. We now return to our scheduled programming in progress.